Well, Danny, we're back. Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to We Demand a Podcast. It's been a long time, a good few months. We've changed a lot. We were mere boys, and now we are men. If you forgot who we were, I'm Tyler.
And I'm Danny.
And we're here to bring you the best of music opinions, because music publications are dropping like flies across the internet, but we will get to that later. First, we need to clear the air regarding our absence. There were a lot of rumors going around about us, a lot of accusations, a lot of things being said. So
you're making it sound like one of us got Me Too'd, which is like
well, what happened was some things went around, and to protect our reputation, one of us fled the country. And it probably should have been a national story. I'm kind of surprised it wasn't. Danny actually fled the country for about a good month. Traveled to Indiana. I see it's written here. How did that trip go? Regale us.
My lawyers have advised me not to speak on the ongoing investigation to the circumstances of my disappearance. But I think there's a typo on your end. I'm going to have to maybe do to that intern what allegedly I may have done before this whole mess. I went to India for 31 days. I don't tell the Indian government this, but I technically overstayed my visa for a day. And I'm pretty sure, I'm pretty sure the only reason they did not fine me, because you're supposed to pay $300 was because I almost passed out at the airport from a combination of exhaustion, like air pollution sickness, and I think food poisoning. And so
the big three.
I got wheelchaired all the way through security, and I was looking real pathetic in my wheelchair. And I hit the guy. I was like, I'm not going to charge him this $300.
I would have said, fuck this white boy. Pay up, bitch.
When I landed, the only, everyone's really nice. The only piece of rudeness I experienced was when I landed and was like, here's my visa. Like, everything's good. The guy just threw my passport back at me. Like, he was there just like, here you go, bitch. And I was like, well, good to be here. What do you want to know, Tyler? What exactly do you want to know?
I mean, I feel like you spent a whole month in a whole different country. Obviously, you could talk for a while, but I don't know, just like a quick overview of some of the highlights. I saw the photos that you put. You got to hang out with some monkeys. I saw
I did. I guess
that must have been life-changing.
You know, it was life-changing in a don't meet your heroes kind of way, because those monkeys were truly the most selfish creatures I've ever met in my entire life.
Yeah,
like, you know,
you grew up in Northern Virginia, and that's
oh, hey, yo, Andrew Dice, play him. No, like, you know, so like the guy gives you like candies to hold in your hands, and the monkeys don't give a fuck about you, the guy. They care about the candies, and they're like babies. And at one point, there are two monkeys on me, and you know, I have my hands about 5.5 feet off the ground. And one of the monkeys pulls the other baby monkey by the hair on his head and throws him to the ground because he was going for the candy. And you can't make eye contact with them because they'll try and fight you. They are fucking in public a lot, though, which I have nothing but respect for.
How many monkeys do you think you could take? Like, if you did make eye contact?
Honestly, not many. They're agile as fuck, and I bet you they could gouge your eyes in a second. They go straight for my twig and berries, and I wouldn't like that. Met some monkeys, had a lot of amazing food. I got scammed on my first full day there, but it was fine.
Yeah,
no big deal.
I think that's probably a given, you know, as an American visiting another. Yeah, in a way, I feel like that's a sign of respect.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was certainly like a fucking like welcome to India moment, and I felt welcomed.
Yeah.
The highlight of the trip was I went to some weddings when I was over there.
Mm-hmm.
And at the first wedding, I was the only American. Everyone else had faked.
Wow.
Some for very questionable reasons. I'll tell you later. You, Tyler, not the audience. And they were playing Western music for the first part of the reception, and then they switched to a DJ who kept it going for maybe like 30 minutes before they went to Bollywood. And they played American Boy by Estelle featuring Kanye West. Mm-hmm. And everyone just looked at me, and I was like, all right, I gotta do my country proud. And I danced as hard as I possibly could, got a lot of applause, thought I pulled a hammy, went to the bathroom.
You played through the pain.
30 minutes later, and I had ripped a hole about the size of a kiwi in the crotch of my pants. In my favorite pair of pants. So,
damn.
It was worth it. I was wearing like it was like in the part of like your gooch where like unless someone was looking underneath you, they couldn't see anything.
Yeah.
And the color of my underwear on my grundle matched the color of my pants. So
smart thinking. You were ready.
But
I want to point out to the audience. The other day I was on Facebook, and I saw.
Don't even talk about it. I know what you're gonna say. Don't you fucking dare.
Can I please? It's so funny.
Oh, fine.
So sometimes if someone lists an item on the Facebook Marketplace, it'll show up on your newsfeed, even though it's not like Danny lives right down the road from me. I don't know why it would show up, but it's like for sale, like clothing for Indian wedding. And
if you're interested, I'll give you a real good deal.
It was just so fucking funny to me. Like, this man gets back and is like, all right, time to sell this shit.
Listen, those are my only two friends who I think would get married and invite me. So unless there's a second wedding in the offering, which I hopefully, if there is, I'm like 50 pounds heavier and older at that point. But if you're interested in culturally appropriating at the Reston Town Center, I can slide them your way.
Yeah, maybe not this year, but depending on how the election shakes out, maybe next year. It might be okay.
Come up for Diwali. I'll have you be the only swagged out white boy at the function.
Oh, damn, that actually sounds awesome. I've actually been meaning to kind of get up back to the city, but speaking of New York City, there's a little state across the river that we're going to talk about. Yeah. No, the other one.
Upstate New York.
Yeah. I'm talking about the great state, put that in quotes, the great state of New Jersey. We're gonna have to get into it about this one, but believe it or not, folks, we will be talking about music. This is a special episode. This is our 20th episode, if you can believe it.
I can't.
I honestly can hardly believe it, but Danny and I figured, hey, special episode. This is something I've been wanting to do for a while. We're talking our favorite albums of all time. So this is going to be a very intense podcast. We are going to be throwing fists like you've never seen before.
You better be strapped to your fucking chair like it's the cuck chair in the corner of your room while we're all just sucking and fucking over these albums on the mic.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Typically we give each other an album to listen to and then we discuss it because we have different music tastes, but this is going to be a fun episode. So I want to get right into it. The album that I gave Danny, my favorite album of all time, is The Monitor by Titus Andronicus.
There'll be no more counting the cars on the Garden State Parkway. No waiting for the fun walk bus to carry me to who knows where. And when I stand tonight near the lights of the Fenway, when I yell like hell for the glory of a Newark fair.
Released in 2010, The Monitor is the sophomore album from New Jersey's finest, Titus Andronicus, DIY punk band formed in about like 2005, but I don't think their debut came out until like 2008. And that first album, The Airing of Grievances, it had a more distinct lo-fi sound, almost kind of like recorded straight in the garage, you know, and they were well known in the scene for playing like really intimate shows, basement shows, all sorts of stuff like that. There used to be a DIY venue known as Shea Stadium up in either somewhere in New York or Jersey, but with The Monitor, they kind of turned it up to 11, both figuratively and literally. It's a loose concept album that uses the Civil War, the American Civil War, as a backdrop to talk about its themes of depression, coming of age in New Jersey in the face of emotional turmoil and struggle, and you know, with its anthemic choruses, riffs galore. There's even a bagpipe solo. The Monitor subscribed to really an everything but the kitchen sink mentality to create arguably the most bombastic indie rock album of the 2010s, if you ask me. So there's a lot I can say about this. There is a lot I will say about this, but I gotta turn it over to Danny. Danny, what did you think?
I really don't want to make you mad.
Uh-oh.
No, I'm kidding. I'm just saying, I'm going to feel, no, I was like thinking, I'm like, damn, if I say anything critical, he's going to cancel the podcast.
So we can be critical about these records. He's, you know, obviously a favorite anything to someone is favorite for personal reasons. And I feel like if you're hating on someone because like they're criticizing your fave, that's not in the spirit of what we do.
Well, I'm not going to be... The point being is I'm not going to be too critical. I just have opinions. I would say I liked it. It's a record, like, we've had some records, like, I think Yola Tango was one. Mm-hmm. Wilco was kind of one where the first time I listened to it, I kind of rolled my eyes and was dismissive or didn't like it.
I do remember with Yola Tango, you said, quote, the first time I listened to this, I fucking hated it.
Yeah, no, I always like this. I do think the more I've listened to it, it's grown on me in different ways. I think it's an album that I appreciate and respect more than I love, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And like, I would say what this made me realize about myself is, with the exception of like one or two albums and songs, my favorite art, at least music, is stuff that seems effortless, stuff that seems like kind of like self-assured in its ability to kind of like be technical or whatever. And this is not that. This is like an ode. It is a monument to trying hard and wearing that on your sleeve, not just in terms of its thematic ambitions, not just in terms of its musical ambitions, not just in terms of its lyrical ambitions, but in terms of its sound. Like you said, like, they're a DIY band making a stadium rock record. Like, that in itself is ambitious and worthy of praise. Yeah. Is this my favorite type of rock music? Like, no. You know? Does that mean I dislike it? No. But I do think there was kind of a learning curve to going from, damn, this is really impressive, to being like, I'm actually enjoying listening to this. And my last listen ended about, I don't know, 30 minutes ago. And that was, with one notable exception, with one exception, that was I enjoyed every minute of this record in a genuine way, not forcing myself to. Yeah. I have a lot of thoughts, but I obviously, the question that I have to ask you is, I was a little surprised that this is your all-time favorite record. Just like, I would not have expected this. So I have to ask, like, when you suggested the favorite albums topic, and you were so confident in what your pick would be, I did not share that confidence. We can get into that later. But why The Monitor?
Whew. Coming right out of the gate. So this is just a very personal album for me. I first came across this album maybe like 2014, potentially. It was either 2013 or 2014. The way I found this actually is kind of interesting story. So I used to have a Tumblr blog back in the day, and this one guy had this post of it was like albums that could be the next great American novel, and he did sketches of these albums. So um Illinois by Sufjan Stevens was on there. The Arcandroid by Janelle Monáe was one of them. But the sketch that stood out to me was for the Monitor, because I still have the picture and I can send it to you. I was able to track it down, but it was Patrick Stickles. If you've never seen him, like, he's got this big beard, and the way he has him standing almost on like this cliff with like one leg raised, guitar in his hand. There's like a bayonet fixed to the headstock. And then off in the distance on the water is the Monitor. And it looked really fucking cool to me. I was like, damn, like, this guy's here with like his axe. He's got the bayonet on. Like, this sounds awesome. I've also always been fascinated with the Civil War. It's one of my favorite periods of American history. A lot of my favorite pieces of literature came out from that era. So that it was like, okay, wow, these two things, and apparently it's got like a really cool concept and a really interesting story. If I'm going off of this art that this guy did, and I listened to all those albums on there, and the Monitor just stuck with me. Because at the time, I was just in a really bad place, like mentally, emotionally. A lot of stuff that we've kind of talked about in previous episodes, mainly in Rainbows. So if you want to go back to an earlier episode and listen, that would be the time. But I was kind of going to circle back because I have some notes about certain lines. But again, as someone who was in a dark place when I first came across this, there were just so many lines that seemed as if Patrick was talking directly to me. Just a lot of feelings of like, yes, I know exactly how that feels. And it was one of those moments where, not to get cliche, but it's like, I feel seen. It's like, wow, like you have phrased exactly what I'm feeling, and you put it perfectly into words, or just like the music here is perfectly representative of what I'm feeling, or like what I want to feel. And musically, I just think it rips. Like, I think that was a big part. Like, obviously the lyrics and everything to me are great, but the opening chords of A More Perfect Union, like, fuck me, that is my my pump up song. Like, I will run through a wall if you crank that shit. I'll be like, let's fucking go, let's do this, I'm ready to go. And just going from that to the line, Trams Like Us, Baby We Were Born to Die, then you have that lick going into like this really awesome solo moment. It was just like, holy shit, like this, it feels like someone is kind of grabbing me by my shoulders and like shaking me and being like, listen, bitch, you can do this. It doesn't matter what life is going to throw at you and everything you go through. Like, you have the strength. Like, come on, like, let's charge into battle. Like, we got all these guys coming at us, but fuck it, all we need is ourselves. We can do this. And it was just a big motivator in a time where I didn't have much motivation and much hope in really anything. I was just kind of stuck at home. All of my friends were away. I'm going to school, and then I'm going to work, and then I go home, and like, all the people I'm talking to are online. I'm just doing homework, and I just felt such a dead end. It's like, you have your coming of age crisis, there's the midlife crisis, but then you have your late teens, early 20s crisis of like
the quarter life crisis.
Yeah. And it's just like, I was deep into that. I'm like, what do I do? A lot of self-doubt. I I don't know if I had like fully come out yet when I first listened to this as well. It's like maybe a good thing that like I'm starting to kind of forget like what year did I like officially come out? I don't know. It's been a while, but
well, I think you're very brave for coming out as a Tumblr user in the year of like.
Yeah. Oh boy. I know. Finally someone recognized it. Finally. That's all I've really wanted all these years. But that's such a big reason. Is this the best record ever made? Absolutely not. I'm the first person to admit that. They're like, we've talked about better records. I've given you better records than this on this podcast, but I think for something to be your favorite, at least how I look at it, you have like a personal connection to it. You know, you think of like food, like sometimes your favorite meal isn't the most delicious meal you had. It could just be like the way your mom made chicken noodle soup when you were sick. You're like, man, that's my favorite meal. If I could have that again, I'd go for it. And that's just how I feel about this album. It was such a comfort for me in a time when I really needed something like this. And just then digging more into Titus Andronicus's music and Patrick Stickles' ideology on life and just creating and music and all sorts of stuff. And I'm sure I'll get back into this as we dig a bit deeper, but yeah, that's as best as I can answer that question.
I mean, that's the perfect answer, right? Like, I think you said it best. Like, your favorite, it's about it being very personal. I think it also says a lot about you and your confidence in your sense of self that you can just pick something like this. Just be like, yeah, that's my favorite. I think it speaks a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I had the pleasure of when was this? 2021, maybe. Either 21 or 22. They Titus Andronicus toured. I think it was 2022. They went on tour for the 10th anniversary of the Monitor, and they played this album in its entirety. And I was like, hell or high water, I'm gonna be there. And regardless of like how you feel about this album, if you can ever go to a Titus Andronicus show, like you're gonna fucking feel something. It's such a great space. It's such a great time to be in this room with everyone just shouting out like, you will always be a loser and that's okay, and just all these great lines. It's like it was one of the best shows I've ever attended. And I had knew before that this was my favorite album, but that was a moment was like, oh yeah, like this is a desert island album for me.
Yeah, I mean, like it so has those like stadium rocker, like honestly like drinking song vibes at times.
Theme from like, Cheers, baby.
I would say my favorite moments of the record were parts of the record where it's more freewheeling, it's looser, it's like leaning hardest into the sort of like raucous energy of it. And so my favorites, and the first one might be a bit of a contradiction of this, but Battle of Hampton Roads, that's definitely my favorite.
Fucking banger.
That might be the single best song you've had me listen to.
It is so good.
Like, and then Titus Andronicus Forever / and Ever. Like,
oh yeah,
that is like, I think both those songs are the energetic peak. And then depending on my mood, it was either Theme from Cheers or the last 80% of A Pot in Which to Piss. I can get into that later, but like
when that like Bruce Springsteen Santa Piano bit comes in.
I was gonna say when it really leans into sounding like 70s stadium rock with like the kind of like ragtime piano flourish, and you know you could almost hear it in kind of like who does the feeling all right, like it has Joey Cochran maybe, whatever his name is. Like when it really leaned into that, it was at my favorite. I think what was harder for me is when, and this goes back to like, it lives and dies by trying very hard. Like it's a very ambitious concept. It's a very ambitious record. I think almost every song is like over 7 minutes. I think
most of them are definitely clocking in over 5.
Yeah. Even Theme for Cheers, which is a shorter one, is like 5.5.
Yeah.
And I think, Patrick Stickles.
Yeah.
I was going to say Tommy Pickles. Patrick Stickles.
Hell yeah.
He understands what it takes to make a record this ambitious, and he understands, okay, you have to have slower balladier moments. You have to have emotional range, and like there's such a like high level, I would say, I don't want to say theoretical, but like almost like thematic. Like he understands how to tell a story through a record.
Yeah.
And I think the moments when it was like, okay, well, I know this is what the record needs here, and we have to button it up a little bit. Even within songs, like the songs themselves have these sort of like, they contract and they expand, and not in a formulaic way, certainly not, but because every track is so long and like it's a journey, they're forced to have these sort of like dynamic differences to make it interesting. And I think the moments when it contracts are harder for me, not because I dislike it, but because that's just like I said, like this period of music sort of like, I'm not going to put this in sort of like the pop indie, like quote, like label, because I don't think it is, but that's sort of like, let's say 2008 to 2013, like indie explosion, like when it becomes mainstream. That type of music is always kind of hard for me. And while I don't think this necessarily shares a lot in terms of instrumentation, this record only could have come out during the Obama years. Like everything about it, from its instrumentation, which is not Grizzly Bear, but like Grizzly Bear, they have the like big, like, like kind of like millennial chorus O's. Thematically, it made me feel so much like I did during like, this is really pathetic, but like the Bernie 2015 primary campaign. Like it has like Occupy energy, I think, in a way it's difficult for me to describe. And the problem with the Obama years is like, that's also like, not that this is once again, but that's like mustache finger tattoo era.
Yeah.
And when you're sincere, the reason everyone retreated into irony in the Trump years is like, when you're sincere, you open yourself up to being vulnerable, but also like by being that direct and sincere, it's just easier to pop shots, right? If you're hidden behind a veil of irony or virtuosity or something, it's like you can be like, oh, like, yeah, like I meant to do that. Or like what you say is actually not like, you point out something that's true, but actually it's good for me. And so I think this kind of has those same tensions where it's like, I want to be radically sincere. I want to have a song like To Old Friends and New, right? And if that doesn't work for the audience, it's just like, oh man, like you just were really vulnerable and emotive, and now like, do we make fun of him? Yeah. And I'm not. That's not how I felt. But like, I think that tension of like, if you try really hard and it doesn't work, you kind of go, oh man. Versus if you look like you're not trying, it's the whole like, if I don't try, I don't fail sort of thing. Yeah. Like they're going for it. They're trying real hard. And so when it doesn't hit the tens of Battle for Hampton Roads, when it's like those moments were more difficult for me, I'd say.
Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying. It's interesting because later on, Titus Andronicus came out with an album called A Productive Cough, which it is probably their most like divisive record because it's a bit more like stripped back. I forget what Stickles said. He to understand the band, you also like understanding him. He can be sometimes it feels like he's just kind of playing a little bit of like his own joke. What was it? 2 albums ago, they're on Merge Records and they came out with this video and it was Stack's pilot episode, and the whole thing was like, what if we were doing like this sitcom where oh yeah, the record's coming along great, we're almost on it, and then he's going down to the bar and he's like singing with his buddies. Sometimes it's just like, yeah, they're giving me money and I'm doing whatever the fuck I want because like I can, and this is a good time. But anyways, with A Productive Cough, that was kind of the thing. He was like, well, some artist. It was probably Neil Young. He was like, "Oh yeah, I think it was Neil Young." He's like, "Neil Young had Harvest. Titus Andronicus have a productive cough." Like, like making statements like that is the joke. You know, like comparing yourself to Neil Young, or just flat out saying like, "Oh, Titus Andronicus are the best band in the universe." Like it's both sincere and like, yeah, you know, fuck yeah, feel that way about your music, but it's also kind of like, you know, we're just kind of playing up the mythology. But with a productive cough, he was definitely a bit more. It's kind of like emotionally open and stuff again. Not that their music has always been that, but I think kind of what you were saying, when it doesn't work, people are like all critical. And still to this day, people are like, yeah, they never quite hit the heights of the Monitor. But, you know, if you ask me, they're never going to. What they're making now is just kick-ass punkish rock music with some awesome riffs. And like, that's what I fucking want from them. But you know, for me, it's hard to pick a favorite song because I fucking love every song on this album. But you know, gun to my head, my favorite is personally 4score and 7. That's one of my favorite songs of all time. I just think, you know, when the brass section comes in, that's very cathartic, and then just the whole ending rock section. But so what you said, this doesn't necessarily sound like a whole bunch of 2010s indie music, but the elements are there. When I think 2010s indie, I think I go immediately to a lot of like the dream poppy stuff, things like MGMT, Vampire Weekends, a lot of that stuff. And then when you compare it to that, it feels very distinct. But you know, does it try to do too much? Absolutely. But like that's kind of the whole point. It's like, hey, they're giving us the resources to have a fucking bagpipe solo in it. Why not? And I admire how risky that is. You know, you've got elements of Bruce Springsteen, Neutral Milk Hotel, classic punk music, like all mixed in this one package, and I think it sounds fucking awesome. I think everything works. It kind of reminds me of when we talked about Yola Tango, and you mentioned how a lot of their jam segments feel planned rather than maybe with Sonic Youth it's a bit more like organic. And I think it's kind of a case of that. I think there is so much that they're doing, but it's very distinct. It's like, no, like the brass section's coming in here, it's coming at the right moment. Which kind of what you were saying, it's those moments where it feels a little bit more loose, those were the ones that appealed to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I was gonna say two things. One is I have a note on here that's like, I feel like this wants to be a Neutral Milk Hotel type record, but written for adults.
Yeah. I think you could make comparisons from this to like In the Aeroplane Over the Sea.
And I meant that as an insult to Neutral Milk Hotel, not towards Titus Andronicus. I also was going to say 4score and 7 is definitely my least favorite song on this record. I was saying, my last listen, the only moment I was like, God, how fucking long is this thing? Was about like 4 minutes and 30 seconds into that song.
Wow.
But there's environmental elements going on there too. But no, like it's unlike Yola Tango, where I felt like everything was hyper planned. Because this is a punk band, none of it ever feels like they've written the sheet music out for every single solo or anything.
Yeah.
But there's definitely a level of songwriting that, like I said, when you make songs this large and expansive, like, it's not... Okay, this is, like, the closest I think I've heard punk it to, like, prog rock. You know, to the point where they're having, like, bagpipe solos, right? Like,
and I even think saying punk is... It's, like... I'm loosely saying that. You know,
I know.
I don't even think they really... subscribe to it, and that's the whole issue with punk music, you know, where it's like every punk band is gonna say, well, we're not punk. Honestly, to me it's more like Heartland rock, you know, like
100%.
That's what it is. And I think this was an eye-opener for me. I'm like, fuck, man, maybe I do really like Heartland rock.
I was gonna say, like, it felt like stadium rock. There were definitely elements of post-punk in here. There were definitely elements of like third wave ska, which is basically post-punk in its own way.
Yeah.
There's elements of a Jonathan Davis bagpipe solo. But yeah, like, I mean, I think, like, I had another question for you. I was going to follow up, but because you described this also as a loose concept record, and
Yeah.
I did skim the Pitchfork review of this, and that's how they describe it. And I was expecting you to say something different, much like the Black Parade, where you're like, "Oh, there's a clear story to this," and there's obviously an emotional arc to it.
Mm-hmm.
I do think maybe the best use of the concept for me is at the very end of "And Ever." They have like, and I think I read, I could be wrong, that the sort of like faux found audio samples of Civil War quotes are like actual quotes from people like Jefferson Davis and Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, so, like the part
The spoken,
that,
the interludes, whatever you want to call them.
yeah, like the one that Craig Finn reads about like wrapping the soldier in the blanket, that like that's a Walt Whitman poem.
Right.
And obviously there's like 3 different excerpts of Abraham Lincoln's speeches.
Right. So the one that ends after, the one that comes at the end of ... and ever into Battle of Hampton Roads, you know, it's there's a line about "we must not be enemies" in it.
Mm-hmm.
And then Battle of Hampton Roads is, to me, the most rageful and hateful and distasteful song lyrically on the record. And like, that's such a great example of, like I said, this like Obama era irony, and just like the understanding of how to, like, you know, use those sort of like thinking on multiple levels, not just about the music, not just about the interludes, but like how do we juxtapose things, and like, you know, going back to like the technical aspect, like every transition, I think, with maybe you could argue every transition is seamless. It really feels like, you know, 1 hour and 5-minute long song. You know what I mean? Like, it just, the execution is flawless in the little things. It's just so, like, there's a lyric on what song is it? It might be 4score and 7, where he's like, no, it's in with the pot upon which to piss. He's like, "You've never been a virgin, kid. You're already fucked." And I was just like, "Oh my god!" I rolled my eyes so hard, and I was just like, and then, you know, because when he does lines that should be as egregiously eye rolling on Battle of Hampton Roads in particular, like, they work, and I can't say why they work. Like the whole, "There's a way to live the values your forefathers gave you. Prepare to be told
that shit's gay, dude."
Like, why does that one work and why is the other one not? I can't really explain
I don't know.
it.
I think the second one is so 2010s. Like, that's what people would say.
It is. No, I mean, like, that was my thought.
Yeah.
I mean, so was the first one too.
I personally like that. I personally like that first line, but
well, that first one's also very 2010s to me.
Yeah.
But yeah. I was gonna say the last point is, like, when you're doing a high flying circus act like this record is, you know, you're dancing on a tightrope.
Mm-hmm.
The second, like I said, this is why, like, I think it took, while I still liked it, it grew on me a lot, because there's a new thing to appreciate every time you listen.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I was always finding new elements and new things to like and new twists. So once you become exposed to your initial, like, kind of like, eye rolls, and you can kind of, they blend more in the background and the new things keep coming through. I think it really benefits from re-listen because of that. Because it is so deep and so intricate.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to circle back to the whole loose concept album statement. I mean, I think I can't remember like exactly what I was talking about with the Black Parade. But I know with this one, if we talked about this album, you know, 8 years ago, I think I would be more stuck in the position of like, no, like the story is very clear, where as I've gotten older and I've listened to this album so many times, the way I view all of it is like the Civil War is functioning as this allegory of, you know, maybe yourself is America in that sense, just kind of tearing yourself apart at the seams, and the way that we are still dealing with the ramifications of not just the Civil War, but the country's history. It's like you will kind of always have these battles with yourself, and maybe it's all futile and pointless, but, you know, at the end of the day, like, you can't fully give up. I mean, there was a note I had here from Fourscore and Seven, the line, "It's still us against them," and whatever it was, maybe the struggle is all futile. The battle between us and them will go on forever. They might be winning, but we can't give up. And then the line in Upon Which to Piss, where he says, there's a white flag in my pocket, never to be unfurled, just tying into like, just surrendering is that act of suicide that they talk about at the beginning. But I came with my receipts, and there was a really great quote from Patrick Stickles, his thoughts on the album. So what he said was, "The thesis of the Monitor is that we all have to be accountable for our happiness. Our hero, he's not necessarily that happy with himself, but he finds solace in the self/other relationship and is able to define himself positively only in relation to others who he defines negatively. The character feels a lot of angst and ennui and is able to pass the buck onto the enemy that we hear so much about throughout the album. But ultimately, in the end, he finds that's what the other guys were doing. He finds that in the end, we're all the same. We're all slugging it out because it's something to do. It's easier than taking responsibility. In the end, nobody wins, and nobody ends up making any progress. Just like how the Monitor ultimately couldn't destroy the CSS Virginia. Ultimately, we can only be responsible for our own happiness, our own self-actualization, or, if we choose, our own destruction. In the beginning of the record, there's that quote by Abe Lincoln that says, 'As a nation of free men, we will either live forever or die by suicide.' Our point is that ultimately, we have to be responsible for defining ourselves positively and not by absence, which is a symptom of our own postmodern nightmare. But like any human, I'm just bouncing around on a big old spaceship I can't possibly understand." So, like, in a way, this album's talking about so much that it's not really talking about anything at all. But, like, there is no final outcome, no solution to this battle. It's just, we're kind of doomed to keep fighting it. But what spoke to me so much with the Monitor is that whole idea of, like, no, you're the one responsible for, like, your happiness, and you have that power to have that positive outcome and not give in to like the wave of depression and self-doubt. And that's, tie it back in, that's why I love that line, "You will always be a loser, and that's okay," because that was a line that I needed to hear when I first heard this album. Like I said, I'm in my early college years, just really stressed out, depressed, anxious. In general, I always felt like I was on the outskirts when it came to like popularity, probably like my whole life. I never really felt like I was into whatever was super popular, and always kind of on the outside looking in. But I always had the support of my friends. Well, okay, now they're gone. Now you're kind of all alone. And I was just overcome with all of that self-doubt and low self-esteem. And after I heard this album, whenever I thought about that, I thought about that line, and it just was like, it's accepting who you are and being true to yourself. If that makes you a loser, then that's fucking okay. Like, maybe it's cool to be a loser because that means you're you. You're not pretending to be someone else. And like, I hate to go like the whole, oh, there's all the phonies out there, but
John Lennon, watch out.
Yeah, I'm coming for you. Like the 2010s, I feel like that was an era of a lot of people pretending to be things that they're not. I mean, people have always been doing that, but maybe it felt particularly prevalent then because like we were really diving into social media and everything. And maybe now I'm just like so numb to it, but like that's a line that has just always stuck with me. And I just like the idea that it's up to you. Obviously there are people that you can use to rely on in tough times and everything, but ultimately we're all kind of similar. We're all dealing with our own struggles, and we can bring ourselves out of it. That's the big takeaway I get from it.
I was going to say, this just reminds me a lot of our discussion of the Lonesome Crowd West.
Yeah.
I think that record kind of ends on a similar note. Although, even though we debate whether or not it's a happy ending, I think I believed that Isaac Brock had found more like some sort of satisfaction than Stickles had at the end of Battle of Hampton Roads. Like I said, I think that song is the most, like, I guess maybe because he's turning the fire on himself, but I don't know if it ends with this, like, and that's okay. It kind of ends with like a please don't ever leave, right, refrain.
Yeah.
I also think the way you described the concept of, like, it's about, you know, the metaphor of a battle between yourself, like, you know, it's like, it's, you're at war with yourself, you're a nation divided, etc. And then the Stickles quote about the actual battle itself, which for everyone who's not a complete fucking nerd, it was the first battle of metal ironclad submarines. And basically they reached a stalemate and both sides declared victory. And then both those submarines sank like a year later, which maybe doesn't bode well for the whole don't kill yourself metaphor of this. If 2 years later they're both going down.
Well, I think that was probably down to some manufacturing, maybe.
But like, and that's what I mean by, like, this record's just so impressive, and that's why, like, I'm drawn to re-listen to it in a way. I'm most scared of re-listening to it because it is such a commitment, and like that's, you know, my own problem. I'm scared of devoting an hour to something I want to care about. Yeah, that's a discussion for another time. But like, it is so rich, and every time, like, I got what it was about the first time I listened to it. Like, you just feel it, like, even if you can't describe it in words. But every time you listen to it, you get more and more and more. And just to like heap some more praise on it. Just like I think about it in theme from Cheers, like, it's gonna be really bad, but my favorite Eminem song. Is a drug ballad, and he does this really great thing, like, you know, it's about drugs, and then at the end he does a whole like when I'm a grandpa thing, and they do the exact same thing on a theme from Cheers, but obviously I think they do it with a bit more emotional, like, long-sightedness and maturity. And, you know, like, I wasn't doing great in 2014 either.
Yeah, who fucking was, you know?
I don't know. But I wasn't necessarily drawn to stuff with this much. Like, I honestly retreated away from stuff that was this sort of, like, you know, deep.
Yeah.
I treated more shallow stuff. But, like, that sentiment of, like, we're getting fucked up and I can't wait till I'm 60 still getting fucked up. But, like, at least I have perspective on it. I don't know. Like, that out of any part in this record, that really resonated with me. In a way that, like, I appreciate it in light of how, like, you'll always be a loser and that's okay. Like, yes, but this idea of, like, you'll always be a loser and that's okay. And also you still won't get it when you're 60 and you'll still be struggling with it, but that's okay. Yeah. I think that was, like, my favorite emotional moment of the record outside of Patrick Stickles ripping himself a new asshole.
Yeah. Something I want to talk about with, theme from Cheers and even to Old Friends and New. So I think as the years have gone by, I think Patrick has sort of, like, distanced himself from this kind of, like, pro drink your sorrows away vibe of theme from Cheers. So when they performed this song live during the Monitor tour for the 10th anniversary, is he had a guy, I guess just one of his friends that's on tour with him, pretending to, like, wash dishes behind the bar. and Patrick is like, so there's like, I tell you, Frank, like, he's like, he cracks up with like a Keystone Light or something. He's like, it's great to be back on the road and seeing all the great faces in our nation's capital. Here at the Black Cat, thank you all for coming out. And like the piano is playing theme from Cheers, just like a piano cover, and he's just going on this whole like monologue. It was so fucking awesome. It was so great. Like, and everyone's like, yeah, man, just and it's one of those things, like, in the moment, it's like, this is exactly what I want to see. I don't even know if this bartender, this fake bartender, if his name's Frank, but he's like, Frank, you're the best of the best, you know that? And honestly, this band is just also so down to earth. I've met Patrick a few times. The second time I met him, he actually remembered me, which I thought was insane. But I also really respect that too. Like, they've gotten so much praise. I mean, this is kind of like a landmark album of the 2010s. I know like Pitchfork really liked it. I honestly feel like it, as time has gone by, it's been maybe its appreciation is kind of like devaluing when they do all these retrospective lists. Cause like, I really can't think of another rock album from the 2010s that is like on this level for me. I don't know.
I think we've talked before in Rainbow's episode about like, what was the last great quote unquote rock record? I think you brought this up, but like,
I mean, I do want to say, I like something I had was like, and I said this is the guitar album of the 2010s for me. There's one other that might end up on this podcast, but like,
that's interesting.
I can't think of another album from the 2010s where the guitar work is like, fuck, man. I feel like every song has got some sort of riff or lick where like, ooh, yeah, I'm digging that. It's just, I think because it has that, it has those stadium rock vibes, but not in like a bullshit new Green Day album way.
100%. It's very... I will say my actual big critique, and I'm curious to listen to the remaster, was the mixing is just not high value enough for what they're going for. Like things are a bit too muddy, but I don't blame that on them. You know what I mean? Like that's why I didn't really bring it up, but like I really would have liked to hear some like high, like imagine this with like I know you don't like Queen, but imagine this like a Queen budget. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's why I think live
Patrick Stickles Unleashed, baby. Ooh.
Well, that's why I think live this would also go insanely hard beyond that. Because you can actually get the dynamics even more.
Absolutely. And what's great when they play this live, and this is kind of how they end a lot of their shows, they'll do an encore of A More Perfect Union. And now Patrick's doing this whole thing. He's coming out in like a New Jersey Red Devils jersey.
Hell yeah, brother.
And they do the whole thing, like almost like a surf rock thing, like and just playing the chorus, dant, 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 like the steps in on like the circle of fists and everything, and it's just he starts introducing the band, and it's awesome. Like if they ever go on tour again, we got to go to a show because like you'll have the time of your life. But I could keep talking about this forever. What I wrap it up on is. One, I definitely think, revisit this when you're not listening to it through the lens of for the podcast and everything, and you can really just kind of like pop it on and enjoy it and just appreciate it without having to have the more critical ear. But I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on their next album, Local Business. They kind of stripped things back, and it's more like Back in the Garage. They're not super bombastic. The production's good. It feels more just kind of like garage rock, not like Black Keys garage rock, but just in like the vibe.
Actual garage rock.
Yeah. And then the album after that is like, oh, you thought The Monitor was cute? Here's a 90-minute rock opera about all of my mental health struggles.
Oh, God damn it. I'm not interested in that at all. I'm sorry. The garage rock one sounds interesting. I'm curious. That one I'm gonna have to pass.
There are some fucking bangers on The Most Lamentable Tragedy. I can send you the bangers because like, boy, do these guys got bangers, and they're the last few albums they've come out with. They're just good fucking rock albums, and I feel like we're in an age now where traditional rock music like sucks ass. Like they're
don't talk about AJR like that.
They're talking about like they're playing Imagine Dragons on rock stations, or I even think
banger.
Maybe the last bastion we had for like rock music was Queens of the Stone Age, and I just feel like their last albums, the sound just feels so wimpy to me now, whereas like
there's a lot of really shitty third wave emo tribute music on TikTok. I think you should.
Yeah, it's whereas like
before you say rock is, I mean, I would argue the last bastion of rock music was like the Rex Orange County 8-month revival, and that's sort of like sunny post indie stuff. And then he got outed as a rapist, and then that whole scene fell apart. But I don't know. I'm curious to get the other one. I will say this was definitely this was a pleasure. If you had asked me a month ago, I don't think I would have been this positive, but I'm glad I came around to it. It really saved some tears.
I think having that extra break did us good, but there we go. I poured my heart and soul out about the Monitor.
And I poured my seed out.
Titus Andronicus forever and ever, baby.
You know, normally we keep it light and jovial with the bits, but I do want to talk about something maybe a little serious, which is GQ rearranged the corporate structure of Pitchfork, and basically I've seen numbers as high as 50%. I've seen higher of the Pitchfork writing staff has been laid off or like marginalized to the point where they're not really collecting a paycheck anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And like we've talked about like with the AI stuff, you know, we had fun with Lil Tech. No, who was the AI rapper?
Dude, what the fuck?
I almost said
his
Lil
name?
Tecca, but that's like a real rapper. But like, you know, we've had fun talking about this stuff.
I forget his name. Damn.
But you know, music journalism, I mean, that feels like a bit of curtains for, you know, a certain era of it. We're really boldly moving into the bipolar world of 3 Pitchfork editors on one side and Anthony Fantano on the other side.
God.
Which is pretty bleak.
It's like toothpicks holding up a fucking boulder.
And like, you know, a lot of Bandcamp staff got laid off last summer.
Don't even get me started on that.
Like, if TikTok is going to be the only path forward for indie bands to break through, we saw what happened to Mitski shows. We saw what happened to Boy Genius shows.
So what happened to Death Grip shows?
Yeah, Jesus fucking Christ. Let's just say that GQ, your days are numbered. All of y'all media purchasing billionaires, your days are numbered. And if you want to make a tri-polar world, tell your friends about this podcast so we can start beefing with Anthony Fantano more openly.
Yeah, we are internet's true busiest music nerds. I've been so busy that not only have I finished Cyberpunk 2077, but I have now started the Final Fantasy VII remake. So I'm a little busy. Okay.
Listen, I'm so busy. I'm so busy jerking off to music. I've actually ran out of time to jerk off to regular porn. I am gooning to the Rolling Stone top 500 albums of all time. I'm edging my goon fork. Fuck off.
Can you imagine if like Rolling Stone is what we have for music criticism? I do want to say this. There's a lot of negative stuff I could say about Pitchfork, but you're an absolute fool if you're trying to deny its influence on music, bringing new bands to light. I didn't do a lot of Pitchfork reading in the last few years, but I would go and look at their best new music, you know, and see like, oh, what what's best new music. And you know, it was kind of lame to see the evolution from, I don't know, giving like the debut Black Midi album or something best new music to like, oh, here's fucking Boy Genius, like the band that every single person on the planet is like aware of.
I do think that has a lot to do with the corporate influence. Anyway.
It definitely does.
Like that alone is the same thing that seeded, and like it still didn't matter, right? Like I think the larger point is that even these corporations want you to lean into that, they still will never be satisfied. You know?
I think, you know, this could age like milk within a month or two, but there's still some good publications like Stereo Gum, The Quietus, Brooklyn Vegan. You know, all of those are still fighting the good fight, as I'll say, talking about good bands.
I'd say NPR is still doing good stuff too.
Yeah, honestly, losing the Bandcamp editorial writers for new music was a bigger loss than Pitchfork, I would argue, because they were talking about some like really great shit that like Pitchfork wouldn't be covering yet. It was
and I feel like the loss of Pitchfork is more of like a real state of the industry writ large. Like if they can do it to Pitchfork, like who's left more so than,
you know, it's like our Bandcamp when Epic bought them, you were like, well, you know, hopefully like this doesn't blow up. And
the top 5 Fortnite dances to do to the new noise release sort of thing.
Like come on, like if Epic's gonna buy Bandcamp, at least put like my music into Fortnite or something. Like goddamn, like at least let me do that. But it's just, you know, what hurts is everything you could say about Pitchfork. They got one thing right.
Oh, fucking hell.
They did give the Monitor a higher score than the album Danny gave me.
Oh, yeah. I am, after following the highs of 8.7, the Monitor, returning to the lows of 7.9.
Yeah. Now, if this was a video game, that'd be a piece of shit video game.
I was going to say, if it's below a 9.1, it's unplayable.
You fucking kidding me? You gave this shit a 7.5? This is garbage.
But the album I gave for Tyler, I'll do the intro after I say the name. I'm feeling it that way. Was Donuts by J Dilla.
Let's go.
Donuts is the last release of J Dilla's life. He died 3 days after the release of this record, which was also his 32nd birthday. He suffered from a rare blood disease and lupus for the last 2 years of his life. He was in immense pain. There were days when he couldn't really move, and he was in sort of like a high level hospital treatment center, starting in 2004. He recorded 29 of the album's 31 tracks while in that facility. You know, some days, you know, he couldn't move his fingers, so he had his mother, who was very close with, like, massage his fingers to be able to actually work on it. He refused to let anyone listen to it before it was finished. And I panicked when Tyler asked me my favorite record, but this used to always be this is always my go-to response for years and years and years. And so I just said, you know what, let's lean into what past Danny would say. And, you know, I still agree with it. There's a lot I could say, but I'll save it because we're going to go long anyway. I guess, Tyler, like, what'd you think?
Yeah, I listened to this before, like several years ago, and I don't really think I had the appreciation for it. I want to say if there was ever an album to call a grower, it's this, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's like the first time you hear it, you're like, "Oh, that was good," and then you listen to it again, and you're like, "Oh yeah, this is good," and then you listen to it again, and you're like, "Oh my god, this is really fucking good." It rewards multiple listens. And just the more you listen and the more you give it your time, the more you connect to the emotion and deeply personal connections that it has to the artist. And I'm gonna say something here. This is a bombshell statement. This album made me cry.
Me too.
This album made me cry, and I think it's a multitude of things. Definitely as I get older, I find myself getting a lot more emotional when people like talk about their art and putting themselves into their art, and like, not to rehash the subject, but it's just, you know, with AI bullshit so fucking prevalent now, it just, you come across something like this and it's like, this is like, only humans could make this. Only a real fucking live person could do this. There is just so much humanity in these songs and this album that it's like, it makes me want to go to Best Buy and just start beating the shit out of all the computers. Get your robotic ass out of here. Like, it's just you know, I knew that it came out like 3 days before J. Dilla had passed away, and I knew he had an illness and everything. I didn't do a whole ton of research on it because I knew you were gonna shed a lot of light, but I've always been fascinated by any kind of art that an artist makes where like they know their career, their life is coming to an end. Like, I don't know how many like Hayao Miyazaki movies you've seen, but his most recent movie, that's like the whole theme of it. Of like, here's a guy he's not getting any younger, is thinking, all right, well, you know, I've got what, maybe one movie, maybe two more left in me. How do I reflect on like my whole legacy, everything that I've done? David Bowie's Black Star is another. Like, as an artist, when you're told, hey, like, you got one more year to live, and you're like, well, this is the last thing I'm gonna make. Like, how do you? I can't even fathom how you approach that. And I'm sure there were so many things he wanted to do that he couldn't do, but as someone who is so like album focused and like, how does an album flow? It's crazy because like, I don't think this flows all that well as an album, but like, the tracks are just so fucking good that like, it doesn't need to, because there's like this.
That's interesting.
Because... Like, I mean, there are moments that flow, but I'm thinking of like, okay, like the end of Working on It just ends, and now you're into the next track. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about.
Yeah, I mean, what I was gonna say is like I think in particular, like, as I get older, and I think like what I would always say, I think really anchored me to this record is obviously when I first started listening to it is when I was first really getting into hip hop and I really wanted to make it. Yeah. And this is like a Bible. Like, the things he does on this record from like a technical production sense are like just unfathomable. Like, and especially thinking of the context, like, not that this really matters, but this is all 45s he's sampling because that's all I could bring in the hospital. Yeah. Which just makes it just that much more difficult to like scratch them, that much more difficult to find samples. And like, you know, some of these songs have like 8 or 9 samples. Some of them have 2. And you can't really tell the difference, honestly, which I think is also very impressive. Oh, yeah. He runs the litany of techniques. And I think this listen for this podcast, I really try to be like, okay, I know I can go for days and days and days about why this is so impressive from like a technical perspective, but that can't be why it's my favorite record. Not that alone. And I really try to put the emotions in the front. And, you know, I mean, he died when he was like basically 31. Like I just turned 29. And I think that feels a lot different than when you're 14 or 15.
Mm-hmm.
Like thinking about that. And like to be making this on your deathbed. Yeah. And that's why I think particularly the really abrupt stops on things really say something. He did an interview about this where he told someone, like, because he was like not doing press, you know what I mean? Like he was like dying. Where he said, I think that the initial conception was these are all the beats that people wanted to rap on but couldn't figure out how to. And a lot of people have tried. I think only one person has ever succeeded in rapping over any of these beats. Like 1 million people have tried to rap over Lightworks before, which is maybe the most insane one to try to. Like there's so many obvious ones.
Yeah, I know.
Like
fucking Lightworks.
Like Doom has a track on Gazillionaire that's on Lightworks. A lot of lesser rappers.
Yeah.
And then
I mean, if there's anyone that can do it, it's going to be Doom, you know?
And I don't think he did it either, to be honest. But like, when you start thinking about it emotionally first, like, I think it really runs through these gamuts of emotions of like, you know, your last thoughts. And sometimes they're more obvious. Like, the last song on the record, Welcome to the Show, the vocal sample is singing What I Thought It Could Be. And like, that's fucking tragic. People have said, Waves, which I want to come back to that. It's supposed to be a song for his brother, John. And the vocals are roughly singing Go On, Johnny. There's like stuff like that. There's one for Ghost, which is you used to take me across the lap, used to whip me with a strap, which is like about his mom. He was very close with his mom. But like the raw instrumental, like emotion, like the emotions from the instrumentals. And I think we're going to go into sort of like the territory of I'm not quite sure, like when we did Godspeed. But like you run through the emotions of nostalgia, of frustration, of anger, of acceptance, of beauty. In these mostly hyper simple, hyper compact moments. And I do think that's kind of how my brain works. I think that is how I process emotions. They're like, you know, I've talked to other people and they're like, I just don't know what I'm feeling. And I've never been able to relate to that. To me, my emotions are always crystal clear. The problem is, how do you deal with them? And I think the way this record approaches music, where it's like, you know what it is immediately, but the more you dwell on it, the more you find. But they're also like hyper compact and hyper specific. And then they're just bouncing around. Like, I had a good friend tell me, he was like, Danny, when you wake up, it must be like your brain just starts sprinting, doesn't stop till you go to bed. And that's what this record does to me too. It's just like, the second you really start to get a feel on an emotion, with the exception of, I'm going to say one song, which is Last Donut of the Night, is the only one where I feel like you've really, like, that's the one I've cried to. You're just being bounced around all these different emotions. And like, I don't know. I can't imagine what it's like to die in this way, to be honest, but I have to imagine that's what my mind would be doing.
Yeah. I mean, I want to touch upon the usage of samples. I think this is the best example of like, this is the kind of shit you can do with only sample based music. And it's so much more than like, wow, what a cool sample. And like, we've talked about that before, you know, we talked about that at length with like DJ Shadow, but how he utilizes the samples, the way that he does, it just says so much about his mastery of his art. And something that I thought about as I listened to it is like the physical act of making this music, but it was probably painful, super difficult, and like still went through it all. And like you end up with this. And then, you know, that just leaves me all these thoughts of like, I think of like the album cover where I don't know how much say he had over the album cover, but you know, even if he didn't, whoever picked it, I think it's great. It's just like him there, not really looking at the camera, has a smile on his face.
So the album cover is from a video, and Jay Dilla, kind of like Kanye's done later in his career, gets associated with this sort of like post Tribe Called Quest, like quote unquote backpacker rap. We did an Odyssey EP that's from a backpacker, and he was always like, "I'm not that shit." Like J Dilla was famously at the strip club all the time, so the video that the still taken from is him partying at a table with a bunch of white girls. Like,
that's great.
I just wanted to put that in there, but keep going. Like
it just I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's symbolic of the kind of natural joy that music brings you, and this sense of like, this is his final message that he's putting out there. And rather some really, really deep philosophical album cover. It's just like, yeah, this was literally me partying at the strip club, but just like, yeah, like here's my shit. Like this is me. This is who I am. I don't need something to overstate who I am. And that's, it goes what I was saying. Just as you continued to listen, you just found more and more stuff to think about and connect to, and just gain not only a better appreciation for his art, but like a better appreciation for just being alive and your own self, and just like the beauty of life. And to get that from an instrumental sample-based hip-hop album is an insane accomplishment. Like people will try to write lyrics to convey that and probably won't get it across as well as he does on this album.
I do think why that's a reason it's impossible to rap over beyond the technical aspect of it is like, I don't know, like, I don't know how you can capture some of these, like, Airworks, the one that's like fired up. Yeah. That one, like, you can capture the vibes of that with
Mash,
words better than he.
Like Mash was probably my favorite, just because I love that, like, that little piano bit. But I'm like, dude, I don't need to hear someone rapping over this. Like this is what I want to hear. It's like, how can I improve like the fucking Sistine Chapel or something? Like, it already looks pretty good. I don't think I could, I don't know, maybe if the Mona Lisa had like big gazongas or something.
Well, the big gazongas is, I think this record is actually one of my first exposures to hip hop, but not directly, because a lot of these songs were used as Adult Swim bumps shortly after it came out. Like Mash is one, Mash and Waves are the two. I remember putting this record on, I was like, oh, I know these songs. Like, I think Stepson with the Clapper. But, while we're on the topic, you mentioned Mash was maybe your favorite. Do you have any other favorite tracks that really stood out?
There are a lot. I kind of had to start like limiting myself, because as I was listening through, I was like, I'm writing down half the fucking album. But I said Waves, Mash, Time, The Donut of the Heart, Airworks, Lightworks, and Bye, because I love So Far to Go. That is one of my favorite J Dilla tracks, and the way he uses that sample is just like so fucking cool. I love it. It's like, oh yeah, I've done this before. Like I've used this melody and this sound, but I'm gonna fucking do it again and mess with it a little bit more. What are you gonna do about it? Like, I don't know. I kind of love that shit.
I think not to get on your ass. I do think, not to be well, actually, So Far Gone came out after this. Like that was
it probably did, but like,
yeah. But regardless,
he
like,
probably made that track before, probably. Like, unless they were.
I have no idea. Like, well, because like so much of this is like he didn't want anyone to be like know what he was doing. You know what I mean? But I do like that you picked the two most iconic Adult Swim bumps in your list of favorites.
It's funny because it's like, I think Mash is the one I probably remember the most from Adult Swim bumps, but then you hear some and you're like, oh yeah, I can picture it. I do want to circle back to Adult Swim, but I want to save it for the very end. Okay. Because it's a very appropriate note to end it all on. But again, like I was commenting on, there's just a real sense of freedom all over this album that I really like. It doesn't to me, I don't get the sense that he's concerned about all of these tracks fitting together like they're puzzle pieces. It's a track album rather than like the package as a whole, at least for me, which again is fascinating because I'm usually the opposite. I'm like, well, how do all these measure up? But it's almost like it transcends an album and becomes this full like engram of a person, and it's it's just a beautiful work. There's a reason why it feels like you're listening to a survey of hip hop, you know,
100%.
like the beats that he's made encapsulate so many different styles. I mean, without him, we're not going to have lo-fi hip hop beats, like chill hop, even like some fucking trip hop is on here. Like
100%. It's very psychedelic at times.
Yeah, he's doing fucking everything, and it's just like, goddamn.
And like, you know, like, I don't think you get a lot of the super dissonant industrial stuff without some of the songs on this record. Like, The Factory's the obvious one, but even stuff like The Twister is like super dissonant and weird, and like for him to be doing this with what's basically all soul samples for the most part, like finding these like weird moments of surrealness in this like Motown machine sound, like finding the voice in the machine, it's just incredible. And like, you know, like he has songs like on this record, like oh fuck, I need to look at my notes. Oh my god, Don't Cry, where he's like, here's the sample and here's how I chopped it, sort of essentially, like almost like an exercise, and like doing, you know, he pioneered a lot of things. And I want to kind of, at the end of this, I'll come back to like maybe the most important, quote unquote, if you believe one NYU professor. But he was one of the first people to like, you know, we listen to De La Soul, right? Mm-hmm. And that's like mostly loops, like, and there's loops on this record. And I think, you know, that speaks a lot to like knowing when to loop in and when not to, and like that in itself is a thing. But he would listen to an entire song and pick out different chops from all like 5 minutes of the song and then put them back together. And no one's done that as well before or since, but like you don't get guys like JPEG Mafia,
yeah,
RIP, doing what they're doing without what he puts forth in this record. You know, you have stuff that's almost this like exercise, and then you have stuff like Fired Up or Light My Fire, that is just a sped up loop, you know, with some incredible mixing on the drums. And the fact that he can, you know, you're always questioning like which is which, and like the fact he can get all that emotion out of, you know, like these highly technical pieces as well as these very simple ones. But something you said about how it is kind of like, I was just going to say on the form of the record, like this is, to me, this reads as like a beat tape. Like if you're a producer, it's just like, yo, here's my best beats on a CD. If you fuck with them, let me know and you can buy them off me. Yeah. Like that's how this reads. But he does this thing with certain motifs. Like he uses the same sort of scratching samples. He has that like
the fucking like alarm thing.
Yeah, he has the air horns. He has the what or like the I believe it's like Paula Perry. Yeah. And like the sort of like the Temptations intro bit. Like he does these things.
Ladies and gentlemen.
To give it a bit more unity. Yeah. And like, to me, what makes it flow is every song is so good you don't like want to stop, because other people have said that. It's usually the common critique, if there is one, is like it doesn't flow very well. And my thing is like it doesn't have to flow well, because it's like it never you can never get too comfortable with anything. Like by the time you're really starting to understand something, it's like, yeah, but I got this too. Yeah, but I got this too.
Yeah, that's how I feel. It's like it doesn't, you know, fuck it. It doesn't need to
and isn't that a life, you know what I mean? Like it isn't that like personality? Like I think you captured better than I could have. Like this is really just like a study of a person, you know, like this really is just so him, and no one else could have made this.
Yeah.
And I think the rawest expression of who you are is like, it's not organized, it's not necessarily coherent, things do stop at weird times. The last thing I'll say is the thing the NYU professor says is, he says J. Dilla invented a, quote, new type of rhythm. I think that's going a bit far, but what he did was, you produce, but he doesn't he was the first guy to not quantize anything, which is basically using software to make sure all your beats are on rhythm. And I think that's why everything feels so loose and things feel so like dreamy and psychedelic, because some of his drums are so far behind the beat or like almost offbeat. But no one's ever done that better before or since. And the fact that I'm sitting here talking about all these technical marvels and we're crying because of, you know, how beautiful the emotions are in that, like, that's what I was saying earlier about, like, my favorite stuff is it's trying so hard, but it doesn't read it. Like, unless you're sitting there and really like taking notes, you're not going to know things like Last Zone of the Night, like how technically pristine all those chops are and that loop is, right? You're just feeling it in your...
Yeah, it's an album that is really centered around just the feeling you get from it. Do you have any final thoughts? You want me to go into my final thought?
I mean, my final thought is this will not be the last time I'll give you a record with a lot of J Dilla on it. I'm really curious to see how that comes around, but like, I'm just glad you were able to get over your initial negative reaction to working on it.
Yeah, God. I feel like out of every song on this album, working on it is maybe not the best one to play in your retail store. I don't know. Like, there are so many like nicer, more chill songs on this album that like if they play that, I'd be like, okay, yeah. But not that one where like the first 30 minutes I feel like there's
working on it
and like all this shit going on. I'm like, but my final thought was we were talking about Adult Swim, and I remember there's an old Adult Swim bumper that paid tribute to both Nujabes and J Dilla, who share a birthday, and I think they put it best when they said their legacies live on. All you have to do is press play.
Ladies and gentlemen, time at the Regal. Young man went out and made a name for himself. He's been on every record-breaking show in the Regal Theater in the last 2 years. Ladies and gentlemen, stop. Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, Danny, we're coming to the end here. Our great return, and it's new episode, it's a new year, and we didn't really get to talk about some of our favorite things from 2023, like music, movies, our best poops that we had. I mean, there's so much.
I had a crazy one, but
I'm sure. When you went to India.
I can't even let y'all in on that though. It's too personal. I was just gonna say, on favorite albums at least, there's a lot of good albums. The one I'm gonna tell everyone to listen to is speaking of artists who died tragically young, to really keep it uplifting this fine February day. Fly or Die, Fly or Die, Fly or Die, World War by Jamie Branch. She was a jazz vocalist who died shortly after the album came out. Incredible record. Not really like anything I've given you, Tyler. But I think everyone should. It's folksy, it's jazzy, it's jazz fusion. Like it's really something.
Yeah, I'm interested. I'm gonna check that out.
Also a great year for Michigan hip hop. The Babyface Ray record is really good. The V's record is really good. Let's say Midwestern generally. The No Name album was really good.
I did enjoy that one. Yeah, that was good. I think for me, it's maybe like not a fancy pick. I just really loved the new Yellow Tango album.
Oh, brother.
I just
get
thought,
a new bit.
I really dug it. I think it's so awesome to see, artists getting up there in their years, like still killing it. The one like metal album that King Gizzard did, I fucked with that a lot. And then what was it? It was a Sprain, The Lamb as Effigy. That album, fucking insane. It's like an hour and a half. It's almost like Swans. And then they came out with this super ambitious, crazy album. And then like, I think a week later, they're like, yeah, so we're done. we're disbanding. Cause like, what more can we fucking do? And I thought that was cool. They were like, yeah, we kind of fucking knocked out of the park. I really enjoyed, the album from Rat Boys. That was a lot of fun. And, I think the last one I'll talk about, North Americans. It's kind of like almost like ambient country folk. It's really, really peaceful album called Long Cool World. I think it's on Third Man Records, which is the Jack White record label, but I feel like I'm still going through music from 2023. I have a big 100%. Backlog. Like, and it had me thinking, maybe 2024, I'm just not going to worry about trying to listen to all this new music, because like I would listen to all these new albums from bands I've never heard of, and it's just, you hear a lot of like bullshit. Not that it's bad, but it's just like, it's just unremarkable. It's almost too much of a good thing, but 2024 for me personally, we're off to a good start. We had a new album from The Smile that I really fucking enjoyed. Future Islands, they had a new album that's great. Jay Mascis from Dinosaur Jr. dropped a new album today, so I don't know, could be a big year. Boy Genius are going on hiatus, so don't need to hear about them in the press.
I heard there's a new Drake record coming out, so my loins are moist.
I think
actually,
you're a little too old for him.
All I've been bumping this year is I'm just listening to the Zone of Interest soundtrack in my headphones all day.
Oh my god, we don't have enough time to talk about that movie, but all I'm gonna say is, god damn,
we're seeing
it's I got another thing to say regarding the Zone of Interest.
Talk to him.
When you go to a movie, that movie is very heavy, very intense. It's not a popcorn friendly movie or any kind of food friendly movie for that matter. It's a very quiet movie. So, I can understand, maybe you're sitting there in the theater and it's nice and dark in there and you're comfortable in your seat. It's middle of the day. But a man during my screening of The Zone of Interest fucking fell asleep. Sir, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that the Holocaust is boring you.
I don't want to name names, but I knew someone who fell asleep during our screen of The Zone of Interest.
There's a difference between there's a difference between like, you dozed off and you're quiet. Okay, hey. We've all been there. I almost fell asleep during the tragedy of Macbeth. But this man, this is towards the end of the movie. Now, if you've seen The Zone of Interest,
towards the end
of the movie.
Oh my god.
And I'm sitting there and I'm like, God, I can't wait for this movie to be over in like the best way, and I hear I'm like, what the fuck was that? I know I've been hearing a lot of shit in this movie, but I don't know. I don't see anybody sleeping on screen. And it's like
he was honk schnooing in there.
Oh, he was, you know, like, god damn. I don't think I could fall asleep during this movie. It's not a sleep friendly movie. It's not one I would be popping on when I'm like, you know what? Middle of the day on a Sunday, I could go for a little nap. Let me put the Zone of Interest on as a little background noise, and yeah, hearing the distant screams of the people in Auschwitz really makes me feel cozy and comfy. I don't know. Fuck that guy.
I would say my favorite Zone of Interest story is my friend saw it, and some people got in like a verbal and physical dispute and had to get thrown out of the movie theater.
me beating ass at the 3:20 showing of the Zone of Interest. Like, oh god, I want to say that movie felt like a groundbreaking moment in film. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. Maybe we talk about this next month because the Oscars would have happened. It wasn't my favorite movie of the year, but if I had to give any movie Best Picture, it would be The Zone of Interest, just because it does something with art and film that I think like 100 years from now, it's going to be like, yo, when this shit came out, game changer. But
I mean, I mostly agree, but I actually have kind of a different dark horse snub I think should get it.
Five Nights at Freddy's.
I know it like technically like doesn't quite meet the time parameters, but they should make an exception. But Agent Argyle, when that twist hits,
who's the real Agent Argyle, bro?
The regional Agent Argyle was the friends we made along the way.
The friends we made along the way. I am sad that there wasn't any kind of nomination in any way, shape, or form for Five Nights at Freddy's, simply because the image of Freddy Fazbear on the Oscars red carpet would just be like
that would heal this broken nation.
Yeah, if we could have it wouldn't be all four of the animatronics, because there's no way. They never send the whole cast. But maybe at least two of them.
It's kind of like it's kind of like the State of the Union lone survivor. Like, we can't lose all four animatronics in one tragic kind of like.
It reminds me of like how back in the day, it's like, oh, Shrek 2 is nominated. Oh, there's like CGI Shrek and Donkey. Like, I want to see like Freddy in the crowd. I want to pan to the crowd. Oh, there's Ryan Gosling. Oh, there's what's Freddy Fazbear wearing tonight? You know, I just Oscars, have a word with yourself. Look yourself in the mirror.
Speaking of healing this broken nation, not to cut you off, we have another episode coming out next month.
Yeah, can you all believe it? We're not done. Episode 21.
Episode 21. Jesus Christ!
Yeah,
how far we've come.
I don't know how many more I got in me.
Oh, don't say that. You can't you can't bring the people up and then tear them down again.
Nah, I'll be doing this on my deathbed.
Oh, thank God. So you had mentioned that you're going to San Diego.
Yeah, I'm going to San Diego for work, and it's going to rain the whole week.
Oh. How is that even possible? I thought the whole point of like San Diego is that it's not supposed to rain there.
Dude, I don't know. Like, it's like, what are the fucking odds, right? If
are you still going to go to Legoland? Even when it's raining?
I'm not gonna have any fucking time to go anywhere, I don't think. Oh, I just Googled San Diego weather. This is good. You know, I wonder if this trip's even gonna fucking happen. San Diego issues evacuation warning for flood-prone areas ahead of storm. So
hell yeah, brother.
we're off to a good start. And that's like before the rain even happens. So I foresee some flight delays in my future. And at that point, I might just say, you know what? Fuck it. I'm attending this shit virtually and I'm going home.
Well, I already picked out the album for you based on what I thought San Diego was going to be like.
Maybe this will change the trip and it will make me, instead of being all gloomy and rainy, I'll be thinking sunshine So
you will be thinking sunshine. I've been wanting to give this record for a long time, and I can never think of the right time because, it's hard, but this felt like the right opportunity. We're gonna enter bold new territory with this one, which is we're doing jazz fusion. We're doing the album is called Sounds of Crenshaw Volume 1 by Terrence Martin Presents the Polyseeds.
All right.
The last time I was actually on top of new music releases was 2017, 2018 when this record came out. So you can really get a glimmer into what I was like when I was cool.
Oh, wow. Cool, Danny. Damn. I don't know if I'm ready for that. I don't know if I'm ready for that one.
Only 7 years ago, which makes me want to off myself. But
well, I think Jazz Fusion will still be a cool listen in an airport. I mean, the last time I listened to an album for the pod when I was in an airport, it was DJ Shadow. So we all know how that turned out.
Hoping you enjoy it half as much.
We'll see. Well, for you, I figured, well, you know what? It's time to head back to Japan, Danny.
Oh, God.
We're going back to Japan, and I think it's time to talk about perhaps Japan's greatest cultural export.
Tentacle
the
porn?
One, the only Boris. I don't know how much Boris you've listened to, but brother, you're going to listen to Pink, and that little mind of yours is going to go to a whole new fucking dimension.
I thought you said Borat for a second.
Borat, yep. Yeah, we're listening to Borat. Nah.
15 uninterrupted minutes, or 50 uninterrupted minutes of Zionist propaganda.
Yeah.
Borat.
But I've been wanting to introduce a Boris album. I mean, they are maybe for me, like the premier sludgy, doomy metal bands that also can do psychedelic music, that can also do drone, that can also do punk. Like they are just fucking phenomenal. And they have a very wide discography, but it's hard to where do I jump in to this? It's like, how do I start watching One Piece? you know? But Pink is a very good entry point. It's a good survey of all of their sounds, and excited to talk about it. Excited for you to dive in.
I'm excited to talk about it too. I'm just looking at their album covers, and I see they have one that's a Nick Drake parody. I see they got one that's like a death metal thing.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
They have 3 different albums all called Heavy Rocks.
Hell yeah.
They have one. Yeah. They have one that they just called New Album. So, they kick fucking ass, and yeah, cannot wait to dive into that one. So, March will be a big month, so we hope to see you there.
We'll hear you there. I will be seeing you because I can see all. Like when you put it on your Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, I actually am able to gain a sentience into your being. I astral project.
Yeah. I just have the Apple Vision Pro or whatever, and I can see you when I put it on. You think I can afford that shit? No way.
No fucking way.
Any final thoughts for the people? Any last remarks?
No. I'll see you in the metaverse, baby. I'll see you on the Board 8 Yacht Club yacht.
Yeah, I'll see you at Camden Yards when the Orioles win the World Series.